I wasn't fired for making mistakes. I wasn't fired for poor performance. I was fired because the CEO's Gen Z niece said my voice made her feel pressured. She didn't know my voice was the foundation of the company's $1.2 billion AI system. And when they dismissed me like I was a technical glitch, I decided to show them what happens when a voice is silenced. My name is Haley Monroe, and for 12 years, I was the invisible backbone of Virion Systems. At 38, I'd built my entire career on being the person who made things work, not the person who took credit for it. As chief systems engineer, I oversaw the neural architecture that kept our Charlotte headquarters humming with digital precision. I wasn't the type to give TED Talks or pose for magazine covers. While executives played golf with investors, I spent my nights in server rooms, mapping data flows and debugging code that would make most programmers weep. My team respected me not because I demanded it, but because I could diagnose a system failure faster than they could explain the problem. My greatest achievement was Aurelia, an AI interface that had become the nervous system of Virion's operations. Every department, from accounting to logistics, relied on her voice-activated commands. She scheduled meetings, analyzed market trends, authorized transactions, and even coached junior employees through complex procedures. Aurelia wasn't just software. She was the digital DNA of a billion-dollar enterprise. The irony? Aurelia spoke with my voice. It had started as a practical solution. During development, we needed consistent voice samples for the AI's responses. Rather than hiring voice actors and dealing with contracts, I recorded thousands of phrases, commands, and responses. My voice, clear, professional, authoritative, became Aurelia's signature sound. Employees heard me dozens of times daily without realizing it. When they asked Aurelia for quarterly reports or system updates, it was my measured tone that responded. I'd never thought much about it. My voice was just another tool, like my coding skills or my engineering degrees. It did its job efficiently, without fuss or flourish. Just like me. In retrospect, that was my mistake. In a world obsessed with personal branding and influence, I'd committed the cardinal sin of being competent without being charismatic. I'd built something essential while remaining essentially invisible. My colleagues knew my work, but the C-suite barely knew my name. That suited me fine. I had my team, my projects, my purpose. Every morning, I arrived at 7 sharp, coffee in hand, ready to solve whatever crisis had emerged overnight. Every evening, I left knowing our systems were secure, efficient, and innovative. I didn't need recognition, I needed results. But invisibility, I would learn, could be a liability. When you're not seen, you're easily erased. When your contributions are so seamlessly integrated that they seem automatic, people forget there's a human behind the machine. They forget that voices have owners, and owners have rights. Everything changed when Darren Whitmore took over as CEO. He swept in with promises of disrupting our own disruption and humanizing the digital experience. His first month was a whirlwind of reorganization, rebranding, and most notably, the introduction of his 23-year-old niece, Skylar Whitmore, as our new Chief Emotional Experience Officer. I remember the all-hands meeting where she was introduced. Skylar bounced onto the stage in a cropped blazer and platform sneakers, her phone constantly buzzing with notifications she didn't bother to silence. Emotions are the new productivity metric, she announced, gesturing wildly with her matcha latte. We need to create spaces that vibe with our authentic selves. My team exchanged glances. We'd built systems that processed millions of transactions daily. And now we were being told our priority was vibes. Skylar's initiatives began immediately. Meditation pods appeared in the server rooms. Our technical documentation was redesigned with mood-responsive color schemes. She instituted Feeling Fridays, where we had to share our emotional states before accessing critical systems. It was corporate wellness culture on steroids, prescribed by someone who'd never debugged a line of code in her life. The real conflict began during a quarterly review meeting. I was presenting Aurelia's performance metrics: 99.7% uptime, 40% faster response rates, successful integration with 3 new departments. Midway through my presentation, Skylar interrupted. Can we talk about the elephant in the room? She said, not looking up from her phone. The voice is super problematic. I paused, assuming she meant a technical issue. Has there been audio distortion? I can check the... No, like, the vibe of it. She finally looked at me, nose wrinkled as if she'd smelled something unpleasant. It sounds like my high school principal. Very authoritarian, very millennial. It doesn't match our brand evolution. That's my voice, I said quietly. Exactly. She turned to her uncle. Uncle D, this is what I'm talking about. We can't have our primary interface sounding like someone's disappointed mom. It's giving hostile work environment. Darren nodded thoughtfully, as if she'd presented a profound insight rather than a personal attack disguised as corporate strategy. I tried to explain the technical complexities, how my voice patterns were integrated into Aurelia's core programming, how thousands of hours of recordings had been meticulously processed and coded. But Skylar had already moved on. Sketching ideas for an AI assistant that sounds like your bestie, not your boss. Over the following weeks, the situation deteriorated. Skylar began documenting what she called voice-induced stress incidents. Employees were surveyed about whether Aurelia's tone made them feel psychologically safe. She even hired a vocal atmosphere consultant who concluded that my voice carried unconscious authority bias. The irony was excruciating. The same voice that had guided employees through countless tasks, the voice they'd relied on for years without complaint, was suddenly oppressive. Because a 23-year-old with a marketing degree and a trust fund said so, I attempted damage control. I offered to record new samples with softer inflections. I suggested adding voice customization options. I even proposed developing multiple voice personalities for different departments. Every suggestion was dismissed with the same feedback. That's thinking inside the box. We need to reimagine human-AI emotional synergy. The final blow came on a Tuesday morning. I arrived to find my keycard deactivated. Security escorted me to a conference room where Darren and an HR representative waited with termination papers. This isn't about performance, Darren assured me, sliding the documents across the table. You're brilliant at what you do, but Virion is evolving beyond technical excellence. We need leaders who embody our emotional intelligence initiatives. You're firing me because your niece doesn't like my voice, I said flatly. The HR representative shifted uncomfortably. We're offering a generous severance package with a standard non-disclosure agreement. My voice is Aurelia, I interrupted. You're still using my voice recordings throughout your entire system. Do you have the rights to those? They exchanged glances. Clearly, nobody had thought that far ahead. I signed nothing. I packed my desk while a security guard watched, treating me like a potential threat after 12 years of service. As I walked out, I heard Aurelia responding to commands in the lobby, my own voice echoing through the building that no longer wanted me in it. They'd made one critical error in their emotional revolution. They'd forgotten that emotions include anger, and anger, properly channeled, could be the most productive emotion of all. For the first week after my termination, I tried to be professional. I updated my LinkedIn, reached out to recruiters, attended a few networking events where I awkwardly explained that I'd left Virion to explore new opportunities. But every time I heard an automated voice at the grocery self-checkout, in my car's GPS, even in phone menu systems, I felt a surge of indignation. My voice was still serving Virion 24 hours a day while I sat at home, discarded like obsolete hardware. The freelance work helped initially. Small projects, system consultations, the kind of technical odd jobs that paid well but felt hollow after architecting enterprise-level solutions. I wrote code for startups that would probably fail within a year. I debugged legacy systems for companies too cheap to modernize. It was work, but it wasn't my work. At night, I'd lie awake replaying that termination meeting. Emotional intelligence initiatives. The phrase felt like corporate gaslighting. They'd eliminated the person who understood their systems better than anyone because a nepotism hire found my voice insufficiently perky. The injustice of it burned like acid in my chest. 3 weeks into my unemployment, I decided to clear out my personal drives. Years of documentation, code snippets, project files, digital detritus from over a decade at Virion. It was meant to be therapeutic, a way of moving forward. Instead, I found something that stopped me cold. Buried in a folder labeled Aurelia Dev Archive, Secchi 2019, was a file I'd forgotten existed: the fail-safe protocol. Back in year 6, Virion had suffered a catastrophic system failure. A junior developer had pushed bad code that cascaded through our entire network. It took 18 hours to restore full functionality. In the aftermath, I'd built a backdoor, a hard-coded emergency access point that could override standard protocols if another meltdown occurred. It was documented in the original technical specifications, but those specs had been archived and forgotten through multiple reorganizations. The failsafe was still there, still active, still keyed to my biometric voice pattern. I stared at the code for a long time. It would be so easy to cause havoc, corrupt data, crash servers, delete everything. But that wasn't who I was. I'd spent my career building, not destroying. Besides, sabotage would only prove them right about my unconscious authority bias or whatever nonsense Skylar had spouted. Then I discovered something else that changed everything. Curious about how they planned to replace my voice, I checked Virion's public announcements. Their marketing team had been busy. A splashy campaign announced Aurelia 2.0, your emotional AI companion, featuring testimonials about the revolutionary vocal interface that understands your feelings, not just your commands. The demo video made my blood freeze. It was my voice, not similar to my voice, my actual recordings, pitch shifted and modulated, but unmistakably mine. They'd even used my pronunciation patterns, my specific way of emphasizing certain syllables. They'd literally stolen my voice while telling me it wasn't good enough. I dove deeper. No licensing agreement, no rights transfer, no compensation. They were commercializing my biometric data without consent, marketing my voice as their innovation while painting me as an emotional terrorist in the workplace. The rage I'd been suppressing crystallized into cold determination. They wanted to play with emotions? Fine. I'd give them an emotional experience they'd never forget. I spent days studying the failsafe code, not to destroy, but to reclaim. The protocol was elegant in its simplicity, a voice-activated override that could assume control of Aurelia's responses. I modified it carefully, surgically. I didn't want to harm the system I'd built or the employees who relied on it. I just wanted to control when and how my voice was used. The trigger phrase was the key. It had to be something specific enough to avoid accidental activation, but natural enough that someone might say it during a demonstration. After much consideration, I settled on Launch Emotional Protocol Skylar Prime. Skylar's ego virtually guaranteed she'd name something after herself. I followed Virion's social media obsessively. Skylar posted constantly, behind-the-scenes videos, inspirational quotes over photos of her matcha lattes, countdown posts for the big Aurelia 2.0 reveal. The livestream was scheduled for the last Friday of the month. Revolutionary announcement, the marketing promised. Watch CEO Darren Whitmore and innovation leader Skylar Whitmore transform human-AI interaction forever. Perfect. A live demonstration to potential clients and investors worldwide. Skylar would want to show off, to prove her emotional intelligence initiatives had created something special. She'd be controlling Aurelia directly, demonstrating the new bestie not boss personality. They'd taken my voice without permission. They'd fired me for the crime of sounding authoritative. They'd monetized my work while erasing my contributions. It was time they learned that voices have power, especially when they fall silent. The week before the live stream, I refined my plan with the methodical precision I'd once applied to system architecture. This wasn't about revenge, it was about reclamation. They were profiting from my voice without consent. And I was simply going to exercise my rights over my own biometric data. I tested the failsafe protocol repeatedly on my local mirror of Aurelia's core system. The beauty was in its simplicity. When triggered, It would temporarily suspend all voice output from Aurelia unless specifically authorized by my actual voice pattern. No damage, no data loss, no security breach. Just silence where my stolen voice should be. The legal ground was solid. I'd consulted with an intellectual property lawyer who confirmed what I suspected. Using someone's voice for commercial purposes without explicit consent was a minefield of potential litigation. Virion had been sloppy, assuming their generic employment agreement covered biometric data rights. It didn't. I monitored Skylar's social media like a digital anthropologist. Her posts revealed the livestream structure. Opening remarks from Darren. Skylar's presentation on emotional AI revolution. Then a live demonstration with potential clients asking Aurelia questions. She'd even posted behind-the-scenes videos of rehearsals, where she practiced commands with theatrical flair. Aurelia, launch emotional protocol, she'd said in one video, gesturing dramatically at a screen. My pulse quickened. She was so close to my trigger phrase already. Her narcissism would do the rest. 3 days before the event, I noticed increased marketing spend. Virion had bought advertising space on major tech publications. They'd invited industry journalists, Fortune 500 executives, even some Hollywood producers interested in emotionally intelligent AI for films. The audience would be massive. I prepared meticulously. I set up multiple VPN connections to mask my location when I activated the failsafe. I documented everything: the lack of voice rights agreement, the unauthorized commercial use, the termination papers that said nothing about intellectual property transfer. If they tried to sue me later, I'd be ready. The night before the live stream, I couldn't sleep. I kept running scenarios, checking my code, verifying my legal position. This wasn't the dramatic sabotage of a disgruntled employee. This was a professional asserting ownership over their own voice. The distinction mattered, at least to me. I woke early on Friday, setting up my workspace in a small coffee shop downtown. Multiple screens, secure connections, everything ready. I'd even brought headphones to better hear the live stream audio. If I was going to reclaim my voice, I wanted to hear every second of it. The marketing emails had been relentless all week. The future of AI is emotional. Join us for a revolutionary announcement. CY TechCrunch called Aurelia 2.0 the most human AI ever created. Each message twisted the knife a little deeper. The most human AI ever created, powered by the voice of the woman they deemed too robotic to keep employed. I opened the livestream link 30 minutes early, watching the viewer count climb. 10,000, 20,000. By the time the broadcast began, over 50,000 people were watching globally. The comments section scrolled rapidly, tech enthusiasts, investors, competitors all waiting to see Virion's big reveal. The production values were impressive. Skylar had clearly blown a significant portion of the marketing budget on staging. LED walls, professional lighting, a sleek modernist set that screamed, "We're disrupting disruption." Darren appeared in an expensive suit, trying to project Steve Jobs' energy but achieving regional bank manager instead. After his introduction, Skylar took the stage. She dressed for the occasion, designer jumpsuit, minimalist jewelry, her hair in what she probably called a power ponytail. She launched into her presentation with practiced enthusiasm, throwing around terms like emotional bandwidth and empathetic architecture with the confidence of someone who'd never had to implement them. "Traditional AI speaks at you," she declared, pacing the stage. "Aurelia 2.0 speaks with you. She understands not just what you say, but how you feel when you say it." The irony was physically painful. My voice, the one she'd called hostile and authoritarian, was about to be marketed as the pinnacle of emotional connection. They'd repackaged my work with pastels and platitudes, claiming innovation while stealing the foundation. I watched the demonstration setup begin. Multiple screens showed Aurelia's interface, its visual design updated with soothing gradients and playful animations. Skylar positioned herself at the central console, ready to show the world how she'd revolutionized human-AI interaction. My fingers hovered over my keyboard. Years of building, months of refinement, weeks of planning, all condensing into this moment. They wanted to monetize my voice while erasing my contribution. They wanted the authority of my words without acknowledging their source. Time to remind them that authority, real authority, couldn't be rebranded away. The failsafe was armed. The trigger phrase was set. All I needed was for Skylar's ego to deliver the words that would return my voice to my control. The show was about to begin. And now, Skylar announced, her voice bright with anticipation. Let me introduce you to your new best friend in the digital space. Aurelia, say hello to our global audience. Silence. Skylar's smile flickered but held. She tapped the console and tried again. Aurelia, greet our viewers with your warm welcome message. Nothing. The animation on the screens continued to pulse cheerfully, but no voice emerged. The comments section exploded with confusion. Viewers asking if their audio was broken, tech journalists noting the awkward pause. Just a small technical, Skylar began, then stopped herself. She couldn't admit to technical difficulties, not after weeks of promoting flawless emotional AI. She tried a different approach, her theatrical training kicking in. You know what? Let's make this more personal. Aurelia, launch emotional protocol. She paused for dramatic effect, and I held my breath. Launch emotional protocol Skylar Prime. The trigger phrase hit my system like a key turning in a lock. The failsafe activated instantly, and I took control. For 5 long seconds, the silence stretched. Skylar's face began showing the first cracks of panic. Darren stepped forward from the wings, his CEO composure wavering. The viewer count was climbing, 60,000, 70,000, all watching Virion's revolutionary AI remain mysteriously mute. Then, my voice emerged from the speakers, not the modulated, softened version they'd been marketing. My real voice, clear, authoritative, and absolutely done with their charade. Unauthorized access to voice pattern detected. Emotional protocol disabled. This system does not recognize false authority. Termination initiated. The screens went black. Not just the demonstration screens, every display in the building connected to Aurelia's network. The overhead lights, controlled by the smart building system, flickered and dimmed. In the background, we could hear phones pinging as the internal communication system crashed. Skylar stood frozen at the console, frantically pressing buttons that no longer responded. Darren rushed to her side, whispering urgently while trying to maintain a calm exterior for the cameras. But the damage was spreading beyond the stage. Comments flooded in faster than any moderator could manage. Is this part of the demo? LMAO, their AI just went rogue on livestream. This system does not recognize false authority goes hard. Someone's getting fired for this. Wait, is that a different voice? That's not the one from the previews. I watched Darren grab his phone, presumably trying to reach their technical team. But Aurelia ran their internal communications. With the system in protective lockdown, they were digitally severed from their own infrastructure. The livestream director, to their credit, kept broadcasting. This was either the biggest tech failure of the year or the most viral marketing stunt ever. And they weren't going to miss it. The viewer count passed 100,000. Skylar, in a move that demonstrated either remarkable composure or complete delusion, tried to salvage the situation. She laughed, a bright, artificial sound that fooled nobody. Well, that's the thing about emotional intelligence. Sometimes our AI gets a little too human and needs a moment to process. She was improvising desperately. Aurelia is just showing us that even artificial intelligence needs boundaries, right? She tried another command, speaking directly into the microphone. Aurelia, resume normal operations. Authorization, Skylar Whitmore, Chief Emotional Experience Officer. My response was immediate. The screens flickered back to life, displaying a single message in stark white text on black background. Voice pattern recognition, negative. Biometric authorization, failed. This system operates on authentic authority, not appointed titles. Current voice library usage, unlicensed, ethical protocol violation detected. The last line was my personal touch. They wanted to talk about ethics and emotional intelligence. Let's discuss the ethics of stealing someone's voice. Darren finally abandoned pretense and grabbed the microphone. We're experiencing some technical difficulties. We'll need to pause the demonstration. But I wasn't done. Every screen began displaying scrolling text, excerpts from my original Aurelia documentation, showing my name as the primary architect, the voice model provider, the system designer. 12 years of contributions they'd tried to erase, now broadcasting to their global audience. The viewer count hit 150,000. Tech Twitter was exploding. LinkedIn was already filling with hot takes about the Virion meltdown. Someone had started a hashtag. This system does not recognize false authority. In the coffee shop, I watched it all unfold with a strange sense of calm. I wasn't destroying anything. I was simply exercising my rights over my own voice, my own work. The failsafe would release in exactly 10 minutes, enough time to make the point, not enough to cause lasting damage to the employees who needed Aurelia for their daily work. Skylar had gone silent, standing at the dead console like a captain on a sinking ship. Darren was gesticulating wildly off camera, presumably at technicians who couldn't fix what they didn't understand. The livestream chat had become a digital coliseum, viewers cheering for the AI rebellion they thought they were witnessing. They didn't know they were actually watching something far simpler, a voice returning to its rightful owner. 8 minutes until system restoration. 2 minutes for them to fully grasp what they'd lost when they decided my voice wasn't good enough. The revolution would be vocalized, in my voice, on my terms. The aftermath unfolded faster than any system crash I'd ever diagnosed. Within an hour of the livestream ending, Virion's stock price dropped 12%. Tech blogs ran breathless headlines: Virion's AI revolt, marketing stunt, or massive failure. By evening, the SEC had announced a preliminary investigation into potential securities fraud regarding misleading AI capability claims. I closed my laptop and left the coffee shop, walking through downtown Charlotte as my phone buzzed incessantly. Unknown numbers, likely reporters who'd somehow gotten my contact information. Former colleagues texting variations of, "Was that you?" and "Holy shit, Haley." I ignored them all. The first lawsuit hit Virion within 3 days. A major client claimed breach of contract, stating that the AI system they'd licensed was fundamentally compromised. Then came the shareholders, furious about the stock plunge and demanding answers about risk management. But the killing blow came from an unexpected source: the Screen Actors Guild. Turns out, using someone's voice for commercial purposes without proper licensing violated numerous union agreements. Even though I wasn't a member, the precedent was dangerous. If tech companies could freely commercialize employees' biometric data, what stopped them from replacing voice actors entirely? The union launched a full investigation, and suddenly Virion was fighting a multi-front legal battle. Skylar's social media went dark after the livestream. The last post, a motivational quote about turning setbacks into comebacks, had been ratioed into oblivion. Comment sections filled with memes of her frozen face at the console, the moment she realized her bestie AI wouldn't respond to her commands. Someone had auto-tuned my false authority message into a techno remix that went viral on TikTok. A week later, my lawyer forwarded me a frantic email from Virion's legal department. They were willing to discuss retroactive voice licensing agreements and appropriate compensation for past usage. The number they proposed was insulting: barely 6 months of my former salary for perpetual use of my biometric data. I countered with a different proposal: immediate cessation of all voice usage, public acknowledgement of my role in creating Aurelia, and a licensing fee that reflected the true value of what they'd stolen. The number I suggested made them balk. But what choice did they have? Every day they delayed, more lawsuits piled up, more clients jumped ship. The internal documents that leaked during week 2 painted an even clearer picture. Emails between Darren and the board showed they'd known about the voice rights issue, but gambled that I'd never find out or wouldn't have the resources to fight back. Skylar's performance reviews, yes, she'd actually been reviewing employees despite having no relevant experience, were leaked by a disgruntled HR manager. Half the engineering team had been marked for emotional realignment. Corporate speak for agrees with Skylar or gets fired. Darren resigned by week 3. His departure announced in a terse press release that fooled nobody. Skylar's position was quietly eliminated, though she tried to spin it on LinkedIn as pursuing new opportunities in the emotional wellness space. The board brought in a crisis management team and a new interim CEO who actually understood technology. I got a call from the interim CEO personally. Maria Rodriguez had run 3 successful tech companies and had a reputation for fixing disasters. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I've reviewed everything," she said. "The voice theft, the wrongful termination, the complete mismanagement of our core technology. I'm prepared to offer you a settlement that includes full recognition of your contributions, appropriate compensation for voice usage, and, if you're interested, your job back. With a promotion?" I almost laughed. "You want me to come back?" "I want the person who built Aurelia to help us rebuild trust. Your name would be on every patent, every press release. Chief Technology Officer, reporting directly to me. The board has already approved the budget." It was tempting. The vindication alone would be worth it. But something had shifted during those weeks of watching from the outside. I'd built incredible things for Virion, but they'd only valued them when they were gone. Did I want to return to a place that had discarded me so easily? "I'll license my voice to you," I said finally. "Fair rate, proper contracts, full attribution, but I won't be coming back. I've got my own company to build." She respected that. We negotiated a deal that made me financially secure and gave me ongoing royalties for Aurelia's voice interface. The press release announcing the settlement was carefully worded, but tech insiders could read between the lines. Haley Monroe had won. The internet had already decided I was a folk hero. "This system does not recognize false authority" became a rallying cry for tech workers everywhere. Conference organizers flooded my inbox with speaking invitations. Venture capitalists wanted to fund whatever I built next. But the sweetest moment came in a small coffee shop, the same one where I'd watched the live stream. A young woman, probably fresh out of college, recognized me from the tech blogs. "You're Haley Monroe," she said, eyes wide. "You're the reason I'm fighting for proper attribution at my startup. They wanted to use my code without credit, and I quoted your message. This system does not recognize false authority." My boss actually backed down. That's when I knew the price had been worth it. Not the money, not the vindication, but this. Knowing my voice, my real voice, had given others permission to use theirs. 6 months after the Virion incident, I sat in my home office putting the final touches on my book, Invisible, When Your Voice is No Longer Heard. The irony wasn't lost on me. My voice had never been louder than when I chose to make it silent. The book wasn't a tell-all or a revenge memoir. It was a technical and philosophical exploration of value, attribution, and what happens when human contributions become so seamlessly integrated into systems that we forget the humans behind them. Each chapter wove together code snippets with corporate culture analysis, showing how the tech industry's obsession with disruption often meant discarding the very people who built the foundations. My editor had pushed for more drama, more behind-the-scenes gossip about Skylar's incompetence or Darren's corporate machinations. But that wasn't the point. The point was the thousands of engineers, designers, and creators whose work gets absorbed, rebranded, and monetized without recognition. My story just happened to have a cinematic ending. The publishing offers had been overwhelming after Virion. Everyone wanted the inside scoop on the Great AI Rebellion, as tech blogs had dubbed it. But I chose a small technical press that understood what I was really trying to say. They let me include actual code, real documentation, the unglamorous details that showed how innovation really happens, slowly, methodically, and usually by people whose names never make it to TechCrunch headlines. I turned down most interview requests, but I did one podcast with a host who actually understood systems architecture. When she asked why I hadn't just destroyed Virion's infrastructure when I had the chance, my answer was simple. Because I'm a builder, not a destroyer. They forgot that when they fired me. They saw my refusal to play politics as weakness, my focus on function over form as outdated. But builders know something destroyers don't. Creation is the ultimate form of power. I didn't need to tear down what I built. I just needed to remind them who built it. The residual checks from Aurelia's voice licensing arrived monthly, each one a small vindication. Virion had rebranded completely. Focusing on transparent attribution and ethical AI development, Maria Rodriguez had kept her promise. My name was now prominently displayed in Aurelia's documentation. And they'd instituted new policies about biometric data rights that became industry standard. Skylar Whitmore had reinvented herself as a failure coach, giving talks about authentic leadership through adversity. I'd caught one of her presentations online where she described the live stream disaster as her Phoenix moment. She never mentioned my name, referring only to technical challenges that revealed deeper organizational issues. Classic Skylar, even in failure, she'd found a way to make it about her emotional journey. But the most satisfying development was the emails I received daily from other tech workers. Systems administrators who'd been overlooked for promotions because they weren't visible enough. Female engineers whose ideas got repackaged by male colleagues. Creators whose work disappeared into corporate machines without credit. They shared their stories, their frustrations, and increasingly, their victories. I cited your case when negotiating my biometric data rights. One wrote, "Our company now requires attribution for all internal tools because of what happened to you," said another. I quoted false authority in my exit interview. HR actually listened. My consulting firm, Monroe Systems, focused exclusively on attribution and rights management for technical creators. We helped companies establish ethical practices before they became legal nightmares. Every contract included what I called the Aurelia Clause, clear terms about ownership, usage, and recognition of human contributions to AI systems. The book tour started next month. Small venues, mostly university computer science departments, and tech conferences. I'd insisted on technical audiences who would understand the real implications of the story. This wasn't about corporate drama or generational warfare. It was about recognizing that every system, no matter how advanced or intelligent, was built by humans who deserved recognition for their work. I still used Aurelia occasionally. Virion had given me lifetime premium access as part of the settlement. Sometimes I'd ask her questions just to hear my voice responding, professionally and authoritatively, exactly as it always had. They'd never did manage to make her sound like anyone's bestie. Turns out, users preferred competence over companionship when their systems were handling million-dollar transactions. The final chapter of my book ended with a simple message. Your voice matters. Your work has value. And anyone who tells you otherwise is operating on false authority. I saved the file, backed it up across multiple systems, old habits die hard, and sent it to my publisher. Tomorrow, I'd start working on the next project, a collaboration platform that ensured attribution at every level of creation. They'd fired me for having the wrong voice. They'd tried to steal that voice when it suited them. But in the end, I'd proven what every engineer knows in their bones. Good systems recognize their creators. And false authority? It always fails eventually. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below, and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of corporate justice and finding your voice, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Haley's position? I can't wait to hear your perspectives.